Hey, today on Gun Talk Nation, we're actually on location at a gun store talking with Mike Seeklander. He's got some really good tips for you. Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by Pyramyd Air, your #1 resource for everything airgun, Remington Ammunition, CrossBreed Holsters, and Armscor. So today we are on location. We're actually filming First Person Defender. We got Mike Seeklander with us. Welcome in, man.
Thank you, man.
We're actually, if you're listening on the podcast, you don't see this, but it may sound a little different because we're in a gun store. We're actually at C&S Gun Parlor here in Covington, Louisiana. It's our local store we use to get guns in, and awesome dudes. So if you're ever in the area, stop by. But so Mike, we brought you in. This is the first time you're working with us on First Person Defender.
It is, and it's been fun, man. I've enjoyed it.
First day, baptism by fire.
First day, man. Boom. Throw me into it. Boom.
You jumped in perfect. Well, you've done a ton of training. You've done a ton of force-on-force simulation type of stuff. We talk about it all the time, but what's the difference between square range and these types of simulation scenarios?
Man, square range is such a controlled environment. I mean, in theory, you're there to build basic skills or intermediate skills or advanced skills. It's like, how do you shoot the firearm better? From a manipulation to marksmanship standpoint, how do you shoot it better? Mm-hmm. Man, when you get into a simulation scenario, call it whatever you want, now we've got to plug our brain into the equation, right? We got to try to use good tactics, we know those. We have to deal with other humans and body language and contact and a lot of different things. And you really get to see if you can make it all flow and mesh together. It's totally different.
Totally different. You have to make decisions. That's ultimately what it is. I have to make decisions on whether this is a good guy or a bad guy. On the range, all those cardboard targets, I mean, you have shoots, no shoots, but for the most part, there's less decision making to be made and figure out. What I like is the strategy and tactics of it that really don't have as much to do with the shooting part. It's like, pretend to be scared. Okay, I'm gonna pretend to be scared. When you tell someone that, you're like, what? You're like, hey, this might be a tool in your toolbox.
Right. Well, the brain comes into play, and if you think about it, the brain is what messes us up. It messes us up most often. It's just the weirdest thing, man. When you start to add just a teeny bit of stress, something different, and the brain comes into play. You see different things, and that's one of the things that every scenario I've ever done, I'm like, I can't believe that guy ddid that. I can't believe that girl did that. It's just, I would never have predicted how they acted in the circumstances. It's just weird, man.
And the ones we did today, the people did pretty well. But even then, as you were debriefing them, our first guy, he wasn't real clear on what he saw or heard.
Very unclear. Matter of fact, I mean, as we started to dig into it and I asked question after question, he started to really doubt himself and go, I think I knew what I did, but I'm not really certain. I mean, he literally couldn't remember and answer questions. And that's under just a little bit of filming stress and pressure. Imagine that blur, that fog of war in a real life situation.
Mm-hmm. And it was like 30 seconds after he did it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
What did the guy say? Did he say something? I don't remember.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a unique thing. That's why, in a law enforcement type situation or shooting, they're not compelled to give statements or testify for a good period of time afterwards, because the brain is really weird in what it grabs onto and remembers under a little bit of stress, and then what comes out later on. I would suspect that these guys that we put in the scenarios today, they're going to remember things tonight when they're laying there in bed, go, oh wow, I remember that part of that, and tomorrow something else is going to pop into their head. It's just, the brain is the strangest thing, which is why you got to do scenarios. You can't just shoot guns. You can do little, what we call micro fragments on the range, but you can't put it all together. So
yeah, I absolutely agree with you, because the very first time that I did force on force, we were actually doing a certification in Sims to start really doing this show. And simple stuff that we were doing. It was real basic. There wasn't, we were just kind of trying to figure out how Sims works, and the instructors run us through. But it's true, for days after, you're rolling this in your brain, what if I'd done this? What if I'd moved this way? Did he actually pick up the gun? Just stuff like that. You're going, and it's training after the fact. It's like they say, you go you go for a 3-mile run and your
Right.
metabolism is running for the next 6 hours or
Right,
something.
that's
It's
right.
like you get some of that benefit, I think.
Yeah, that's right, man. That plasticity of the brain is going, whoa, what happened to me? What did I learn? What can I recognize later on and that I can act on? So I love to watch people react to little stressors and different elements in these scenarios. I love to try to predict what are they going to do here and then watch them do something completely different because you never know, man.
You know what else is funny to me over the years of watching this stuff, and I'm sure you've seen it both in civilians and law enforcement, is the people who either won't get angry and fight when it's time to fight,
Right.
or sometimes you're surprised by how aggressive someone can get when they seem very mild-mannered and all of a sudden the mean gene switches on.
Yeah, personality shifts are dramatic in scenarios. Another thing that's interesting beyond that is some of the automated responses. You can see, I don't know if the right term these days is training scars. I mean, I've literally had students in scenarios sit there and tap and rack and tap and rack and tap and rack a firearm. I'm talking upwards of a dozen times while a role player is pounding them in the head and beating them, almost senseless. And the only thing their brain is telling them to do is tap, rack, fix the gun. I have a malfunction. My brain says fix the gun right now versus do something else, whatever that is. Run, move, defend, strike back,
Yeah, use the gun as a
hammer.
club. Yeah, totally.
Oh, it's so weird. It's like a loop.
Yeah. The most frustrating ones for me, though, when we're doing this show, are those people who just can't turn it on to say, okay, now they are trying to hurt me. Now is the time to fight and be aggressive.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. Maybe it's a personality thing for me because I'm like, you have to know when to do. I mean, for example,
Right.
and I think eventually that could be taught to a certain degree. Maybe personality. There are people who are sheep, perhaps.
Right.
But
Right.
I mean, even with my kids, we've do a thing where we practice screaming in the car.
Right.
Because we're like, what if somebody tries to take you? Well, I'll scream. Okay, well, let me hear what that sounds like.
Right.
And if a kid, an 8, 10-year-old kid screams, usually it's like, stop it.
Right.
But you go, no, seriously scream like you want someone to hear you 100
Like
feet
you're
over there.
pissed, like you're
Yeah.
angry. Right.
And it's like just that, it gives them permission
Yeah.
to go, oh, that's how loud we're talking.
Right. Well, maybe I would guess as parents we're constantly saying, "What are you screaming about? Stop being so loud. Shut up," or whatever else. But here's the adults are the same way. In one of my classes, I used to I start talking about situational awareness and avoidance. But if not, utilizing strong verbal and body language to posture up and try to get someone to back off because.
Mhm.
I don't want my students to get in a fight. And like you said, I literally have to have them practice it over and over again. A simple verbiage like, back the F up, back the F up, back. You have to make them get louder and louder and louder until they finally hit a point where like, whoa, they know what it feels like. And they learn to present that body language. That's such a weird thing, man. I wonder if certain people, I don't ever remember not being aggressive, although I'm normally quiet, but I've always had kind of an inner aggressive reserve. When it comes out, it's there, but you're right, not everybody has that.
Yeah, and it has to be trained a little bit.
Trained and practiced.
And also, we're trained or we learn growing up to be polite.
Yes.
Don't be rude to people. And part of that is like, well, there are a lot of people who will say, there was something going on, or that guy seemed weird, or whatever, but I didn't want to say anything.
Yes.
Or, well, it's, hey, what are you doing? Stop over there.
Right.
And there is that point when you got to go, all right, that's it.
It's so funny you say that. I just got done with an instructor course, and one of the students posed a great question. He said, I don't ever curse. So is it ever appropriate to use a curse word as an instructor in class? And my co-instructor and I thought about it for a long time, and my co-instructor kind of handled it and answered the question very, very intelligently. And then I added to it, and our point was, if your class is a defensive handgun class, and in your class you're teaching students to posture up and use verbiage like, get back, get the heck back. You get the heck back is not going to resonate, and I don't know what you guys say on the podcast, like, get the fuck back. That's a completely different verbiage. It's a different language. It may resonate with people, and like you said, that tone, that body language, and that tone, or that use of energy. If it's the wrong energy, the individuals we're probably defending ourselves against.
That's what I was
Man,
going to say.
they grew up in a very aggressive world, like the animal kingdom. The strong survive, the most aggressive survive.
And they don't have respect for you.
They have no respect for weakness.
Yeah.
And man, that's so important that
That's a
people
great
learn
point.
that.
Yeah. The bad guys, most likely,
Yeah.
you're going to have to use that type of language to get their attention even.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they have zero respect for politeness.
Yeah.
None whatsoever. And like we talked about in one of the scenarios, they don't necessarily respect firearms either, or guns, or
That's a good point. They may not be
size.
scared of you saying, I got a gun.
No, they've seen lots of guns. They've had guns pointed at them. They've pointed guns at people probably. If you're talking about the career criminal, that's what they do for a living. That's the people they hang out with. So no, that's not going to work with them.
They're not actually following the 4 rules of gun safety a lot.
No, they're not.
perhaps.
I don't think they care about the 4 rules of gun safety.
So the other thing that I know you probably get a bajillion questions about is gear. Everyone wants to talk about gear all the time. And I don't know, I feel like there's a balance of, we always say, well, the gear is not necessarily the answer, but you see a lot of different students.
Yeah.
Do you see particular categories of gear that you like or don't like, or maybe just students have more challenges running or whatever?
Oh, man, that's a very interesting question. For me, it seems to be on 2 ends of a spectrum. One, I've got students that try to solve all problems with gear and fancy firearms, right? I mean, they have the gimmicky gun with the gimmicky optic gun, all these things on it, and they can't perform at all with any of their gear. They come with the most expensive, fanciest rifle, but they can't shoot it. It's not zeroed. On the other end of the spectrum is that student that just bought the cheapest thing they could find. Because in their mind, I don't know if they really envision themselves using it to defend their life.
It's a good point. You go, I don't actually plan to use, this is just...
It's like, I got a gun.
gonna sit in my house.
It's gonna, things are dangerous. We need to go get a gun in the house or whatever, right?
There's millions of them
There
recently.
are millions and millions and millions. We got to get a gun. And that drives me insane because it ties directly in with the gear. Well, that's fine if you decide to get a gun. But what about getting education? What about investing in all of the proper gear? And if you're not willing to do those things, I tell people you don't need a gun. And they're like, well, you're a gun guy. You sell that. You work in the gun. I do, but if you're not willing to invest in training and the proper gear and whatever else, then there are probably other tools that you can have that'll be better for you than a firearm, because you have to invest the time and the money in good guns, good gear, that will allow you to survive.
It's got to be good. It's got to be dependable is what we mean by good.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
It doesn't have to be the top most expensive thing. It has to be completely reliable. And here I tell my students when they come to class, if they're fighting their holster and they draw and the holster flies off, or the holster won't stay in the belt, or if it shifts on their belt or whatever, I'm like, hey, do you think on the flat range when we're not moving or fighting and your holster's failing, it's not going to fail in a real fight? Well, I might fail you. So if it's going to fail in a real fight, what should you do with that holster or that belt or that gun or that optic or whatever it is? Name it. Throw it over the fence, right? Throw it in the trash. Because we just figured out right now in this no pressure environment, it's failing. When you get in the dark alley one night, it's not going to not fail, right?
It's one of the best little benefits to doing a multi-day training class is vetting the gear.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, because most people do not go and shoot 1,000 rounds in 2 days.
Right.
And do a lot of different drawing and moving. And most people very possibly don't even have a holster that they bring to the range.
Right.
And they load it up. It's sitting on the table in an indoor range. They pick it up, they shoot it.
Bingo.
And it's hard. I mean, it's very possible for maybe a less than good option to pass in that environment. Okay, loaded a magazine. And the reload is like literally I'm just going to load up another magazine and go.
That's right. Yeah, it's funny what people do with firearms and gear in terms of not truly testing them. Like you said, a 2 or 3 day class is a great opportunity to test everything. And the students that I have come through, at the end of the 2 or 3 day class, they know They already know I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to invest one of those. I'm going to modify this. This didn't work for me, or this worked great for me. All my stuff ran great, and gear worked great. And then from there, you got to test it within context. You know, we talk about, man, this is a great holster. And I get this question all the time before class. I'll get an email or whatever. Mike, I'm coming to class and my normal carry gun is this gun and I carry it in this holster in this position, but I'm trying to decide if I should bring that or my new 320 and my range holster that's, easier for me to draw out of. And we're talking about a defensive handgun course, a fighting handgun course where you're coming to learn how to defend yourself. The answer should be obvious, but that just tells you how people think, and they don't know what they don't know. So I don't blame them for that, but they need to realize that, hey, if that's the gun you're going to carry and the system you're going to carry it in, man, play with that for 2 days and practice for 2 days with that, and you're going to find out if it's going to work or not.
I'm going to bring this up because you brought it up, and this is going to upset some people. Remington Ammunition's Golden Saber bonded defensive tactical handgun ammunition features a lead core hot bonded to the brass jacket. It produced unmatched expansion and weight retention. When you bond the core to the jacket, you don't get that separation when you're shooting through barriers or tough objects, that type of thing. Made in the USA, available in 4 popular calibers. Check them out, remington.com/handgun. Also, Armscor Rock Island Armory, the newest addition to their lineup, is the STK 100 striker-fired pistol. The STK 100, it's 9mm, holds 17 rounds in the magazine, and it's a solid aluminum frame, which gives it a different feel when shooting it. It's a really nice shooting gun. And they kind of like to say it's the advantages of a metal pistol for the price of polymer. STK 100 features an optics-ready slide and extended beaver tail. Find out more at armscor.com. And then you have CrossBreed Holsters. CrossBreed Holsters, home to the iconic Super Tuck hybrid holster. Also to a variety of other IWB and OWB holsters, including their Reckoning holster. Tired of that box of holsters that don't work? CrossBreed Holsters offers a 2-week trial period so you don't get stuck with a holster you won't use. That's actually pretty cool. Plus, most are handmade in the USA and offer a lifetime warranty. Visit crossbreedholsters.com to find out more. So, appendix carry versus on your strong side carry.
Yeah.
I had a buddy of mine, we were talking about this and kind of batting it back and forth. And he said, here's my thing with it. He said, the people who appendix carry, when they go to a 3-day class, how do they carry? Outside the waistband, strong side.
Right.
Or do they?
I don't know. I think, well, here's the deal with appendix carry. Strong side carry, appendix carry, shoulder holster carry, cross-truck carry. I've seen it all. I mean, it's been done for years and years and years. And a lot of times those different carry methods had different purposes. The context they were in. A guy that was on a horse a lot maybe had a shoulder type holster, a gun he had to access. Appendix carry has its pros and has its cons. Strong side carry has its pros and cons. But my deal is, if you are the appendix carrier, like I'm carrying appendix right now, and you go to a defensive class and you're training in that context, you should be carrying exactly like you are, unless for whatever reason the instructor says, we don't allow appendix carry because we think it's more dangerous in our class. And personally, I don't agree with that. I agree that the gun potentially is pointed in a more dangerous position, but I've seen more people with strong side holsters sweep themselves during the reholstering process, which is still the lower leg, the femoral artery, and
still all bad stuff to
it's
shoot.
all the same bad stuff, right? If you're not paying attention to trigger finger discipline. So I don't know. The people that sign up for my courses that tend to have permission to wear their carry gear come with that appendix position carry type system.
Yeah.
In most cases. So, and they're normally pretty safe. We got to talk about the reholstering process, but I don't know, man. I think the world is changing in that arena. So.
Well, that's good. I mean,
like red dots.
Yeah. So I was going to go there. So what are that's one of them. What are the trends that you're seeing in the last couple of years?
Weird that where 3 years ago, I would say almost exactly 3 years ago, in a class of 10, I might have 1 red dot, maybe 2, probably not though. Now in a class of 10, I'll have 6 red dots, maybe 7 red dots.
Yeah.
Right. So I think they're there. They'll continue to evolve. I think they'll change in manners we probably can't envision right now. But I think they're reliable and functional to the point where especially if you have backup iron sights, which you should if you set your gun up properly, you can absolutely have a red dot on a carry type handgun, defensive type handgun, and be just fine with it. It's not for everybody. And if you don't, here's a unique thing. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to put a red dot on, so the aiming process is super easy. The bottom line is it's exactly the opposite. If you don't train to find the dot in the window and do that on a regular basis, you'll have more trouble than you would with iron sights. It solves a problem, though, if you have a visual issue.
Yeah.
You know, but that's about the only problem it solves. So the fact that it's easier to tell, hey, what the dot is doing versus what the iron sights are doing. So
yeah. And it's interesting to see that change. And it's also interesting how people have maybe perhaps changed their minds. There are a lot of things in this category, red dots, lasers, where maybe in the past, I don't know if you have any of these, you had an opinion about something that you're like, oh, I wouldn't do that, or I don't like that. And then it changed for you. I mean, I know my dad, Tom Gresham, he used to be that way on laser stuff, lasers on handguns. He's like, ah. But then after shooting more and more of doing some laser stuff, he's like, I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's actually, in certain scenarios, really helpful.
Very helpful. Matter of fact, it's a great solution if you don't want to go to a red dot. You have a very daytime, bright, visible laser. You know, I always tell people that maybe poo-poo a little bit on lasers is, especially in a low light situation, get a full-time light laser combination weapon-mounted light, go to a range and shoot when it's dark, and then contrast that to a handheld light and no laser and trying to see your sights. Just do the two different, and when you'll get say there's no comparison.
Yeah.
So for someone that doesn't practice a lot, that gets that bump in the night, that grabs a quick access safe positioned firearm that has a light laser combo on it, totally different.
Yeah.
I completely trust it.
What about, you're talking about quick access safe, home defense, different gun? If you only have one gun, you got one gun, but you and I don't have one gun.
Right.
What's your opinion of people having a different gun for home defense versus your carry gun? Or?
I would like people to think about staying in a family of guns. So for example, if you are, you're carrying a Glock 43X or Glock, some small mini Glock, because that's your daily carry, it's more comfortable, you're going to wear it on 100% of the time that you legally can. Your home defense handgun might be a Glock 17 with a light laser combo, or Glock 17 with a light and an optic on it, or something like that, where the grip angle is the same, it has the same feel, it probably has a very similar trigger. You pick the gun up and it feels the same under stress, it points the same, versus, okay, I'm carrying a 1911 right now on a regular basis, but my home defense gun is a Beretta 92 with a laser. Okay, now I got to pull a big double action first shot. And can I pick up any gun and shoot it? Of course I can. I'm a professionally sponsored shooter, but the average person that is not training that much, they don't have the time, they don't have the ammo, set yourself up for success. Carry a gun that you're willing to carry every day. The biggest, most shootable handgun you can every day. When I say the biggest, I didn't say full size. Whatever the biggest gun you're willing to carry on your body every day is, and then set your home defense handgun up to be the very best shooting handgun you possibly can, because it's coming out of a safe. It can be big.
Yeah.
It can have a longer grip. It can have a longer slide. But stay in the same family of guns if you can.
Yeah, good advice. But maybe not a long gun? I mean, it's just personal preference.
Everybody wants to have, I got my home defense rifle, I got my home defense AR-9 type pistol or whatever else. And I'm always wondering and asking those people, where's it secured where you have quick access to it? And most people won't invest in some sort of long gun securing system. I'm not a fan of...
There's stuff that exists, but...
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to it. If you're willing to have that, I say that's fine. But man, I had a great trainer the other day ask about, man, what about your truck gun? It's going to be a long gun. I'm not opposed to a long gun if you can successfully shoot it and you're trained with it. But the problem, most people are probably better off learning to control a handgun than, especially in closer range situations, a long gun. I mean, I see people move through homes with a handgun and they can manage that okay. Man, you give them a rifle and they're coming in close doorways and they have no idea what to do with the muzzle. Yeah. And we're assuming there's someone else in there with you, right? So what are you going to do now when someone grabs your gun and starts pulling on it? Have you invested the time in close quarter shooting positions? Have you invested the time in long gun weapon retention? So I still say you're probably better off in most cases for most people with a really well set up handgun. And I'm not poo-pooing on a home defense rifle that maybe is suppressed and has a light on it and stuff like that, but you got to spend the time training. Like put an optic on a handgun. If you're not going to spend the time training with it, you'll not find the dot under stress.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. And going back to the how are you going to keep it in your house? Because handguns, we have these quick access vaults from a bunch of different companies now that are pretty awesome.
Yep.
I realized, and it took me a little bit to come around to it when I had kids. I hadn't had kids, and I had a few different guns, a few different places in the house.
Right.
And you have a kid, it's a baby, and I think there's a reason God makes the woman pregnant for a certain amount of time and still makes the baby not be able to crawl for a while. Because he's just helping you out. He's like, I need a little time to figure this out.
That's right. I agree.
And I started realizing, and I've had this conversation with a couple people, look, it's probably, when they talk about how they store their guns, it's probably more likely or more of a risk that someone is going to get a hold of your gun.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, like not a bad guy, but like your kid or your kid's friends,
bingo,
or whatever, then the bump in the night, actual bad guys coming to rob and rape you.
Right,
I mean, like, you need to keep your guns locked up. And I know there's some guys who go, I like to have them stashed everywhere. They're in my glove compartment. They're in my coffee table. It's like, dude, if you have kids, you can't really do that.
Yeah, that's a no-go. I am completely opposed to having a gun, a loaded firearm, without it being some sort of secured. And here's the deal. People like, I want them stashed everywhere. So they're in my house. Mm-hmm. And I've invested $120 or $150 in a quick access safe in all those different locations. And that's the bottom line. Well, maybe the total investment is more than some people are willing to do right away. Well, take your time with it. That's fine. But the point there is, I get the same thing. People are like, well, I'm going to put it everywhere, and if someone's in my house, they're not going to access my gun, or my kids are trained not to touch the firearm. I get it. So are mine. And they actually, I tested them, and they did very good. But I didn't trust their friends. And I didn't trust that one point in time, I was going to be traveling, and my friend was going to have her best friend over, or my wife was going to have, let's say, her best friend or a friend of hers over that just happened to bring the 5-year-old little Johnny, and that 5-year-old Johnny slipped away and got in the bedroom and grabbed my gun and shot himself in the head with it, or came out and shot mommy with it because he doesn't know any better.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to put my loaded gun in the hands of anyone without, you know, them getting it out of the safe or whatever else. I just think that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you got to keep them locked up if they're not in your direct possession.
Right.
All right, so let's go some random questions for you.
Okay.
First gun you ever owned? Do you remember?
Yeah, very, very first gun I ever owned. First gun I ever owned. Well, of course, the series of pellet rifles.
Yep.
And then probably a single action, bolt action, what would have been a Savage 22.
Okay.
Single shot Savage 22. And then very shortly thereafter, a bolt action magazine fed 20 gauge made by, who would that have been made by? Maybe Savage?
Really?
Yeah. And then the first handgun was a Ruger single 6.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and then
It's
later on, for whatever reason, the very next one was a Ruger Blackhawk 41 Magnum. Now, why did I? Well, I'd had read because I was the guns and ammo kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the 41 Magnum has a flatter trajectory, and I'm going to be able to do more things with it.
You're nerding out on ballistics.
I'm nerding out on ballistics, man. And,
Yes,
and then,
totally.
and I'll give you a funny addition to that question is my habit when I was in young high school, you know, whatever, freshman or sophomore, I had a single stage Lee loading press.
Oh, yeah.
I would go buy bullets and primers. So I would come home from school. I would go out. I had my 50 rounds loaded. I had a big snowbank, and by this big hill in my yard, I'd put a paper plate in the snowbank with a little like mark on it, shoot my 50 rounds in practice. Then I would go in, I would load the 50 rounds again, go do my homework, go to bed, repeat.
Really?
Yeah, that was my habit for who knows how long.
You figured out how many loads you could get out of some brass, huh?
Yeah, multiple times. Yeah, that's probably another reason I loaded down a little bit, but that was the.
What about, do you have a gun that you sold or got rid of that you wish you had not?
Well, I wish I still had that single 6, and I don't remember what I traded it for, or even I don't own a single 6 now, or a Black Hawk. I'd love to have both those guns, but I'm trying to think if there's something else I got rid of it. Yeah, probably those, I think. I had a couple of Desert Eagles that were really cool. First Desert Eagle was a 41 Magnum again. Why choose 41 Magnum? I don't know.
Just
that's probably pretty rare.
You're gonna want to be different. That's
I wanted to be
here.
different, man. 41 Magnum. So maybe that gun.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
If you don't know 41 Magnum, you should look that one up. It's kind of that little sweet spot.
Yeah, you don't hear that much anymore.
All right. So finally, we have millions of gun owners, millions of people who bought their first gun in the past year and a half, and we were kind of alluding to it earlier. Maybe bought the gun, they're worried about stuff.
Yep.
And what would be your advice? You probably have had a few of these conversations in the last year of like, hey, just got a gun, now what?
Boy, you got to invest the time to learn how to use it. You know, it's like if I bought a violin because I really wanted a violin, right? What would the next logical thing for me to do be?
Right.
Learn to play the violin. But if I couldn't teach myself to play the violin, what would I have to do? Seek out training. It's the same thing for firearms. I'm amazed at the amount of people that buy a gun and leave it in the box and put it in their closet. And there's some aspect of security that a gun offers where, man, I'm going to put a gun in the closet. I think it comes from TV.
Yeah.
I think people see, man, you know, the zombie apocalypse hits and you get all these people, they found a gun and now that's the talisman and they got the tool. You know, in real life, we know that person shooting all the zombies would never hit any of them.
I mean, it's possible that a lot of these people have never even loaded the gun.
Probably not.
They have a box of ammo next to the box, the gun box.
They probably don't. Some of them don't know how to load the ammo, the gun. Seriously.
How hard could it be? The riders are coming down the street.
That's right.
Great.
They don't know what they don't know. That's it. Learn how to use it.
Yeah.
Learn how to use it or sell it, like I said, and invest in a better door locks and a security system and better cameras and a good fence and some pepper spray that you can figure out and not kill anybody or harm yourself with.
Right.
Learn how to use it.
You don't have to be an Olympic swimmer, but we want you to be able to swim across the pool if you fall in.
That's it.
Right?
That's right. Yeah.
Man, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks so much, man.
That's it for us. We'll see you next time on Gun Talk Nation.